Okay, so welcome to our session, which is Flood Defenses 1. So if that's not what you were expecting, you're probably in the wrong room. So we have in this session 6 presentations, so we have to be quite strict on time. I'm going to give people a warning at 11 minutes, and then the presentation must finish at 13 minutes, so we have time for 1 or 2 questions. The US Army Corps of Engineers have had some logistical problems in coming to this workshop, and we have the final presentation in this session we're going to take first, because we have Mr. Carey Talbot online from the US who's going to make this first presentation. So I'm sorry if that messes up your plans if you want to dodge between parallel sessions. But so we're having, first of all, this number 6, and then we will go through the others in the order in the program. So welcome, Carey, from Engineer Research and Development Center in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and you're very welcome here, even though you're only here remotely. And we look forward to your presentation on the potential role for fabric structures in levee dam breaches.
Thank you very much. My apologies for not being there. It was not so much a logistical issue as more of a permission issue at a very high level in our organization, actually within the Army itself. And in any case, it was not my choice, but I wish I would have been there today. And my many thanks to the conference staff for making it possible for me to give this presentation remotely. I'm making this presentation for my colleague, Mr. Stanley Boc, who's the author of this presentation, and he was not able to make this presentation at this time. But just a quick word on the Engineer Research and Development Center. We are the research and development arm of the Army Corps of Engineers within the United States. And for those who may not be familiar, the Army Corps of Engineers within the United States, we are part of the Department of Defense, and we do have a military support role. However, we also have civilian support roles with specifics in flood protection, and as well as navigation and certain other environmental stewardship roles. And what I'm going to be talking about today is the potential role for fabric structures in sealing active levee and dam breaches. Interestingly enough, there was an article in the New York Times on Monday that was speaking about the potential role for inflatable fabric plugs to be inflated in subway entrances that could have prevented much of the flooding that just recently occurred with Hurricane Sandy in New York City. So this technology of using inflatable fabrics to seal and protect from flooding is something that is an ongoing area of research in the United States, at least, and if not around the world. Just 100 years ago, this is a picture from 1906, a levee breach that was occurring on the Mississippi River. And the method to fight these kinds of problems then was to have men with sandbags and try and fill the hole. If we fast forward to more recent examples today, we see that we have helicopters and cranes and can move much larger quantities, but again, we're still using the same general approach, which is sandbags trying to plug an active breach. It's not terribly effective. What I'm going to be talking about today is what we call the plug, or the acronym there is a portable, lightweight, universal gasket. That's essentially just a plug. It's a high-strength fabric tube, and it's filled with air and water to stop an active breach. And it's pulled into the breach by the current and wedges itself against the sides of the breach, which seals it off. This was tested at a full-scale facility here at our laboratory complex here in Vicksburg, Mississippi. It included a breach of about 12 meters wide and about 2.5 meters deep. And the flows through the breach were about 2,500 CFS, or about 70 cubic meters per second when this test was performed. And the fabric plug that you see here is about 32 meters long and about 4.5 meters in diameter. And I'll show you a video at the end that shows this in action. Another technology that was also developed, the question of, well, once you've plugged it with this fabric device, then how do you actually seal the breach at that point? Because you've got the plugs in the way. And so an arch coffer dam, hydro dam, was also developed so that you can seal off the area around the breach, and that would allow you to then deflate the plug itself and allow it to pass through the breach and collect it, and then the work can commence on plugging that. And that will also be demonstrated in the video. Now, there's some other technologies that were also investigated at kind of the test scale, about a 1/4 test scale at a facility that's owned by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And those consist of, again, fabric devices to help protect against, during an overtopping situation, to protect against erosion, as well as long, shallow breach capabilities where a similar type of device, but smaller in diameter, a plug kind of device, is allowed to be stretched across a shallow breach and prevent that. But again, we have not tested that at a full-size scale. The test facility I mentioned was funded by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and was constructed here at our facility in Vicksburg. And it consists of 3 basins, and you see the capacities of the different basins there. It starts off with an upper source basin that flows down into the actual test basin, and then there's the collection catch basin at the bottom. There's a shallow spillover portion here, so that once the breach is plugged with the device itself, that it doesn't then overtop, but just is allowed to spill around the side. I mentioned that this test was performed here. It was performed about 2 years ago in December. And you see this aerial picture here of the actual facility. In fact, this is during the test itself. There's the yellow linear device there is the plug itself. The flows have not yet begun, but it was placed in the basin, and then once the pumps were turned on or the gates were opened, and the flow was allowed to pass through from the source basin down to the catch basin, the flow pulled the plug right into the breach and sealed it, and we'll demonstrate that in the video. There's a couple of different potential types of uses for this capability. Can be used with levees and dams. You could have a small breach where the plug could be used. If you have a large breach, such as the initial picture that I showed there, you might be able to use multiple plugs with barges in between. We have not tested this at the full scale yet, but we tested it at a reduced scale, about a 1/4 scale, and it seems to work well. Even there's also protection of folder and subfolder type situations, or even underpasses. And again, this, as I mentioned, this technology is being investigated for things such as sealing off entrances to subways or underground situations. Here is a kind of a schematic of how you might, if with a large breach, how you might use inflatable fabric devices to multiple ones with an anchored barge in place, in position to which to anchor you against, so that the large breach may be sealed. But I think we've had probably enough describing it. Let's go ahead. And this video here will last about 6 minutes, and I think that's just about the time we've got remaining. So I'll go ahead and launch it, and you can see it in action. Are you able to hear the sound for that video?
Yes, that's fine.
Repairs to damaged levees require large teams of workers to fill and place sandbags. The work is slow and potentially dangerous. The longer it takes to repair a levee, the more damage the flood can inflict. And due to the deterioration of the levee, there could also be risk to the workers themselves. Although some of the tools have been updated, the methods and equipment used are remarkably similar to those used over 100 years ago. Even with the advantages offered by modern equipment, these techniques may not be capable of preventing the catastrophic damage that can be caused by a breached levee. The rapid repair of a breached levee is critical to minimizing the danger to those in the flooded area. In recognition of this need for a more expedient solution, the Engineer Research and Development Center of the United States Army Corps of Engineers has been spearheading a research and development effort by the name of Rapid Repair of Levee Breaches. The repair technique developed through the course of this research makes use of a fabric tube that is partially filled with water called a plug to stop the flow of water through a breach. As shown here, early work focused on scale model efforts conducted to investigate the behavior of the plug and the amount of water contained in the plug. Once the plug has been successfully deployed and has stemmed the flow through the breach, it would then be reinforced using the arc-shaped arch, which is floated into position while filled with air, secured to the levee on both sides, and then pumped full of water. After the arch is secured and filled, the plug is dewatered and removed from the breach to allow for a protected area around the breach to begin more permanent repair work. It is anticipated that the dewatering of the plug would be facilitated by previously connected lay-flat hoses. When a breach occurs in an area where currents are moving parallel to the levee, as might occur with levees protect against flooding rivers, a different placement technique would be employed. This would be similar to that shown in this scaled model test. Depending on the scenario, winches or boats would be used to control the plug as it is guided into position and secured. In order to further test the validity of the scaled model efforts, the Corps recently completed design and construction of a full-scale levee breach test facility. The facility is located at the Waterways Experiment Station campus in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and is the largest of its kind in the world. The test facility consists of a source basin, a test area, and a drain basin. There are remotely controlled gates positioned at the outflow of the source basin and also at the outflow of the test area. The combined capacity of the source basin and the test area is over 3 million gallons and has a theoretical maximum flow rate of over 2,000 cubic feet per second. The facility was completed in less than 6 months and has been used to validate previous model results in more than 20 full-scale tests that successfully resulted in sealing a simulated active water flow through a 40-foot wide by 8-foot deep breach. The plug used in the test shown here is 104 feet in length and is also 15 feet in diameter. The test shown here was during a largely attended demonstration in December of 2010. The fabric tube was designed and fabricated to accommodate the calculated stresses and strains. As shown here, the plug proved to be very effective in sealing the 8-foot by 40-foot breach. The use of rapid response equipment such as helicopters could permit the stabilization of an active breach. As currently planned, the system will require 4 to 6 hours for deployment and a maximum crew size of 10 trained workers. As the research concepts continue to be validated, the new technologies under development should allow helicopters to transport and deploy all of the system elements from a pre-staged location. This would allow the production system to be capable of sealing a breach within a matter of hours.
Okay, thank you very much, Carrie. That was a very interesting presentation. I think we're pretty much out of time, in fact, but I could take one quick question from the audience.
Okay. I don't know if I'll be able to hear them, so if you could relay the question that has given us, we appreciate it.
All right, I hope you can hear me, Carrie. Some pretty impressive tests you've done there. I was just wondering up to what size of a breach, let's say in linear length of levee that is missing, you would expect this technology to work?
Well, the particular test that was performed there was about a 12-meter wide breach. The overall length of that particular device was about 32 meters long itself. So, you know, obviously something less than its overall length. We haven't tested it on anything any larger. And so with a much larger breach, you would probably want to have use kind of that concept where a barge anchors it in the middle and you'd have multiple spanning across that. We've only been able to test it on the facility that you saw there, and like I said, that was about a 12-meter wide breach.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. You're very welcome to continue to listen in, and we'll move on to the next presentation.